The sun had already begun its slow descent behind the mesas, painting the sky in shades of copper and rust when the trade was made. Dust hung heavy in the air, kicked up by cattle that pressed against the makeshift pen, their lowing a constant backdrop to the laughter and shouting of men who had been drinking since morning. Eli Harper stood near the edge of it all, hat brim pulled low, eyes fixed not on the cattle nor the whiskey jugs changing hands, but on the man who stumbled into the center of the yard with a girl at his side. She was slight, her dress plain and faded, her hair loose and tangled from the wind. Her hands fumbled in the air as if searching for something solid, and her eyelids fluttered half-closed, unseeing. The man beside her, thick through the belly, shirt dark with sweat and liquor, bellowed above the crowd, shaking a dirty cloth sack for all to see. "Got a deal here, gentlemen. Ain't no stock left to bid on, but I got me something better. A body what'll cook, clean, and mind her keep. Blind as a bat, but quiet as the grave. Startin' at $2. The yard roared with jeers and coarse laughter. Some men spat. A few shouted mock bids, more for their own amusement than out of intent. Eli did not move. The girl kept her chin lowered, lips pressed tight. She did not resist when the man shoved her forward, only raised a hand as though to shield herself from a blow that did not come. The crowd surged closer, smelling spectacle like wolves do blood. "Come on now," the drunk barked, grinning wide though his eyes were red-rimmed and mean. "She ain't no use to me, eats more than she's worth. I'll take $1 if it keeps her off my hands." No one answered. Some shuffled, uneasy now. Even the cruelest among them knew when a jest soured. That was when Eli stepped forward. He had not meant to, but his boots carried him all the same. He spoke low, steady, his voice carrying just enough. "I'll give you the $1. The man blinked, then grinned wider, as if fortune itself had fallen from the sky. "Done!" he crowed, slapping the sack into Eli's palm before anyone else could speak. The girl stumbled when the man shoved her toward him, nearly falling, but Eli caught her by the arm, gently, not gripping, not binding. The crowd muttered, then dispersed, disappointed the show had ended without blood or brawl. Eli ignored them. He kept his eyes on the girl, who stood still, breathing shallow, her lashes casting thin shadows on her pale cheeks. "What's your name?" he asked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She swallowed, then whispered, "Clara." Eli nodded one. "All right, Clara. You'll come with me." She stiffened, as though bracing for something. But Eli did not drag her. He simply placed the coins in the drunkard's greedy palm, turned, and led her away from the pen, away from the smoke and laughter and stink of spilled liquor. They walked in silence, the crunch of gravel beneath their boots the only sound. Clara stumbled once, twice, her hand catching at the sleeve of his coat, though her eyes stayed shut, lashes trembling. Eli slowed his stride. He did not guide her like one would a child. He only stayed near enough that she could steady herself when she chose. By the time they reached the edge of camp, the last light had dipped low, the horizon bruised purple. Eli's horse shifted, ears flicking back, sensing the tension of its master. Eli lifted Clara into the saddle, careful as if she were made of glass, then swung up behind her. She sat rigid, silent, her hands folded in her lap. They rode east until the noise of camp faded into night. The prairie opened wide, wind sweeping dry grass into silver waves. Stars began to kindle overhead, sharp against the darkening sky. At last, Eli reined in near a stand of cottonwoods where a creek cut through the earth, its trickle faint but steady. He dismounted, then lifted Clara down. She stood awkwardly, clutching her skirt, her chin lowered. "You're safe here," he said quietly, as if speaking to the night itself. He set about making a small fire, the motions practiced and efficient. Sparks leapt, smoke curled, and soon the faint glow of flame softened the harshness of the dark. Clara remained where he had placed her, neither speaking nor sitting. Only when he handed her a tin cup of water did she move, fingers brushing his as she took it. "Why'd you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice low, raw. Eli paused. He had no ready answer. He only said, "Didn't sit right, the way he was trying to sell you." Her lips pressed thin. She drank in silence, then set the cup down carefully at her feet, as though memorizing its place. They said no more that night. Eli lay near the fire, hat tilted over his eyes. Clara sat awake for a long while, her face turned toward the flames, expression unreadable. It was near dawn when Eli stirred, woken by the faintest shift. He opened his eyes to see Clara crouched at the creek's edge, her face lit pale by the first gray of morning. She had her hands in the water, lifting it to her cheeks, smoothing her hair. And her eyes, they were open, not clouded, not vacant, but clear. She looked directly at her reflection in the water, her gaze steady, aware. Eli's breath caught. He did not move, did not speak. He watched as she straightened slowly, tucking loose strands of hair behind her ear, with the grace of someone who had never been blind at all. She turned then, as if sensing him, and for the briefest instant their eyes met across the dim light. Hers widened, not with the emptiness of one who could not see, but with the sharpness of one who had just been caught. Then she lowered her gaze, lashes sweeping down, and stumbled deliberately as she made her way back to where he had left her, arms outstretched like before. Eli lay still, the weight of what he had just seen pressing heavier than the sky itself. The girl he had bought for $1, the one her father swore was blind, was not blind at all. Eli Harper had never been a man to meddle in another soul's secrets. Life on the frontier taught a man to mind his own, to keep his head low and his word true. But as dawn stretched over the cottonwoods and painted the prairie in silver and gold, he knew what he had seen the night before had changed everything. Clara was not blind. He said nothing when she returned to the fire, arms stretched out, fumbling her way toward the cup of water she had set down. She touched it lightly, as though finding it by chance, then drew back into herself, her face composed, her lashes lowered. Eli studied her in silence. A man could choose to call her bluff, to demand an answer. But Eli knew better than to press before a person was ready. Pressure broke things. Quiet, though. That had a way of loosening knots. So he rose, banked the fire, and saddled the horse. "We'll ride," he said simply. Clara nodded. Her hands trembled slightly as he lifted her up. He felt it. Nervousness, not helplessness. She sat straight in the saddle, too straight, like a soldier hiding behind parade posture. They rode east through the wide grasslands, the morning air cool and sharp. A herd of antelope lifted their heads at their passing, then bounded away in quick arcs of grace. Clara's head tilted slightly, following them with uncanny precision. Eli noticed. He said nothing. By midday they reached his homestead, a weathered cabin tucked against the slope of a low ridge. Nothing fancy. 2 rooms, a lean-to barn, and a corral with fencing that needed mending. Smokehouse off to one side, spring bubbling a few paces from the porch. Eli dismounted, then offered his hand. Clara hesitated before placing hers in his. Her fingers were fine-boned but firm, the hand of someone who had worked before. She stepped down carefully, keeping her chin lowered as though blind eyes might be fooled by caution. "You'll be safe here," Eli said, leading her toward the cabin. She gave the smallest nod, lips pressed thin. The cabin smelled faintly of pine resin and smoke. Eli set her near the hearth, then busied himself with kindling a fresh fire, laying out bread and dried venison from a tin. Clara sat motionless, hands folded, her face turned toward the crackle of flame as though listening. "You can rest here as long as you need," Eli said. Still no answer. Only when he placed a wooden bowl in her lap did she whisper, "Thank you." The words were fragile, like glass too thin to bear weight. Eli watched as she ate slowly, neatly, careful not to spill. Too careful. A truly blind person would have groped, missed, tilted too far. She never did. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "Your father, why'd he sell you?" Her spoon paused mid-air. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice nearly too soft to hear, "Because I wasn't worth keeping." Eli's jaw tightened. He had known drunkards, men who squandered every blessing and cursed the world for their own ruin. But to sell your own child? He bit back the words rising hot in his throat. Clara set the bowl aside. She clasped her hands, knuckles white. "If I pretend to be blind, men don't look too close, don't expect much, don't ask questions." There it was, not the full truth, but enough to tell him she carried more scars than she let show. Eli didn't press further. He only said, "A man's worth ain't measured by another man's coin. You're here now. That's what matters." For the first time since he'd seen her, Clara lifted her face. Her eyes opened fully. Gray, sharp, luminous in the firelight. She looked directly at him. "You saw me," she whispered. Not a question, a reckoning. Eli held her gaze steady. "I did." Her lips parted, but no sound followed. Then she lowered her eyes again, shoulders curling as though the weight of being seen was too much to bear. That night, as wind rattled the shutters, Eli sat by the door sharpening his knife while Clara lay on the cot in the corner. She thought he wasn't watching, but he saw the way her fingers traced the wood grain, memorizing every line of the room. Not blind, not even close. She turned suddenly. "Why haven't you told anyone?" Eli looked up. "Ain't my business to tell." Her voice trembled. "Aren't you angry that I lied?" He set the knife down, the sound of steel on wood echoing low. "I seen enough lies in this world. Most folks tell 'em to get ahead. Yours is the kind that keeps you alive. I won't fault you for it." Clara stared at him, lips trembling. Then, for the first time, she wept. Silent tears, no sobbing, no dramatics, just the slow release of years she had held tight inside. Eli said nothing. He let her cry, the fire popping softly between them. 2 days passed. The prairie seemed to hold its breath, summer heat pressing heavy. Clara began moving about the cabin more freely, no longer fumbling quite as much, though she still kept the mask of blindness when Eli was near. She swept the floor, folded linens, fetched water from the spring. Once he returned from mending fence to find her at the window, staring openly at the hills. She spun when she heard the door, eyes wide. He pretended not to notice, only set his tools down and said, "Storm's coming. Best set the shutters." That evening, thunder rolled low across the plains. Clara lingered near the door, restless. Finally she spoke. "He'll come for me, you know." Eli looked up. "Your father?" She shook her head. "No, the man he owes. He'll come looking." "Who?" Her hands twisted together. "Silas Kearney, rancher south of the river. My father owes him more than he could ever pay, selling me off. That was his way of settling part of it." Her voice cracked. "Silas doesn't forget debts. He'll come." Eli's jaw hardened. He knew the name. Kearney was no simple cattleman. He ran his ranch like a fiefdom, men loyal to coin and cruelty. Eli moved to the door, staring out at the storm rolling closer. Lightning split the horizon. Then we'll be ready. Clara's breath hitched. You don't understand. He doesn't let go of what he thinks is his. Eli turned back to her, his face steady, voice low. Neither do I. The storm broke just past midnight. Rain hammered the roof, wind shrieked through the cracks. Clara lay awake, every muscle tense. Eli sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, waiting. It was near dawn when the sound came, hooves, faint but deliberate, cutting through the patter of rain. Clara sat up, eyes wide. It's him! Eli rose slowly, moving to the window. Through the sheets of rain he saw them. 3 riders, cloaked and shadowed, approaching the ridge. He checked the rifle, calm, deliberate. Then he glanced at Clara. She clutched the blanket to her chest, pale, trembling. They'll take me, she whispered. They always do. Eli shook his head once. His voice was steady as stone. Not this time. Thunder cracked overhead. The riders drew closer. Clara's hands clutched the cot rail, knuckles white. She whispered, almost to herself, You don't know what he'll do. Eli stepped to the door, shoulders squared, rifle in hand. Then let him find out what I'll do. And with that, he pushed the door open to the storm. The storm had not eased by dawn. Rain slashed sideways, rattling the shutters, soaking the ground into mud thick enough to swallow a boot whole. Eli Harper stood in the doorway, rifle steady, as the 3 riders approached through the curtain of water. Clara clung to the window frame, her eyes wide, her breath coming fast. Lightning lit the ridge in bursts, revealing the faces beneath the riders' hats, hard men, scarred and silent, their coats dark with rain. The lead rider, a tall figure with a duster that snapped like a whip in the wind, raised a hand. They stopped a dozen paces from the porch. His voice carried over the storm. Eli Harper. Eli said nothing. The man continued. You've got something that don't belong to you. Behind Eli, Clara whispered, It's him, one of Kearney's men. I know his voice. Eli shifted the rifle, barrel angled just enough to show he was ready. She don't belong to Kearney either. The man laughed, sharp and cold. Everything belongs to Kearney. Debt paid with flesh, that's the way it's done. Hand her over, and no harm comes to you. Eli's jaw tightened. His boots were braced in the mud, the storm whipping his coat around him. His voice was steady, even. Not today. A silence stretched. The only sound was the rain and the horses shifting in the mire. Then the man's grin vanished. You'll regret this. Eli lifted the rifle. Try me. For a long moment, the storm itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the rider jerked his reins, turning away. The 3 of them wheeled their horses and disappeared into the rain as quickly as they had come. Eli lowered the rifle, but did not relax. He knew what this meant. Kearney's men would be back, and not with just 3 riders. Behind him, Clara sagged against the wall, her breath ragged. You don't understand, she whispered. He won't stop. He never does. Eli turned to her, his face carved with calm resolve. Then we won't stop either. For the rest of the morning, they worked. Eli reinforced the door with an iron bar, set extra timber against the shutters, and stacked firewood inside. Clara moved about the cabin without the pretense of blindness now, her hands quick, efficient. She boiled water, packed food into sacks, fetched extra blankets. At last, as the storm thinned to a gray drizzle, she sank onto the cot, face pale. Eli studied her a long while. Tell me the rest, he said quietly. Clara's hands twisted together. For a moment she seemed ready to refuse. Then something broke loose in her, and the words tumbled out. My father lost everything, cattle, land, even the roof over our heads. Kearney gave him coin, enough to drink, enough to gamble again. But the debt only grew. When he couldn't pay, Kearney took me instead. Her voice cracked, but she forced herself on. I thought if I pretended blindness, if I made myself seem worthless, Kearney wouldn't want me. It worked for a time. He left me at the house, hidden away. But when my father drank himself near to death, Kearney came to collect again. This time, he said he'd have me whether I could see or not. Eli's hands clenched, the knuckles white. And that's when your father tried to sell you off at camp. She nodded, tears slipping unchecked. I thought maybe it was my chance. If I was traded cheap, Kearney wouldn't bother. But he will. He'll come, Eli, and he'll kill you for standing in his way. Eli knelt before her, his weathered hand resting lightly on hers. His voice was low, steady. I've seen men like Kearney. They believe the world bends to their will, but I don't bend easy. Clara looked at him then, truly looked, her eyes red with tears, yet sharp with something else. Hope, fragile as new grass. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Eli met her gaze without wavering. Because you deserve better than being traded like cattle, and because no one deserves to be left behind. She trembled, then lowered her head, silent tears falling onto his hand. 2 nights passed with no sign of riders. The prairie lay quiet, the air thick with the smell of wet earth. Clara began to walk the ridge with Eli, learning where the fence lines broke, where the creek cut deep into the earth. She moved with a strange mix of grace and caution, as though rediscovering the world through open eyes. One evening, she sat on the porch steps, the sun setting in fire-red streaks. When I was a child, she said softly, I used to think the world ended at the horizon. My father told me so, to keep me close. But it doesn't end, does it? Eli glanced at her, the light catching in her hair. No, he said. It don't end, not till we stop walking. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. For a brief moment, peace seemed possible, but peace never lasted long on the frontier. It was the 3rd night when the sound returned. Hooves, many more this time. Clara froze by the hearth, eyes wide. Eli already had his rifle in hand, face set. Through the window, torches glowed in the distance, moving like fireflies across the ridge. A dozen riders at least, maybe more. They've come, Clara whispered. Eli's jaw tightened. So they have. The riders drew close, fanning out in a wide arc around the cabin. Their leader rode forward, torchlight casting his face in cruel relief. Silas Kearney himself, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, eyes sharp as broken glass. His voice cut through the night. Harper, you've got something of mine. Send her out, and I'll let you keep breathing. Eli stepped onto the porch, rifle steady. She ain't yours, never was. Kearney's grin was cold. You think you can stand against me? I own half this county. You're a fool if you believe you can keep her. Eli didn't flinch. Maybe I am, but I won't hand her over. Behind him, Clara clutched the door frame, trembling. The torches flickered, the horses shifted. Kearney's men tightened the circle. Eli knew it then. There would be no walking away. Not tonight. Kearney's eyes narrowed. Last chance, Harper. Give her up, or we burn you out. Eli raised the rifle, his voice calm, final. You'll have to try. The first shot cracked the night like lightning. Chaos erupted. Horses rearing, men shouting. The cabin shuddering as bullets tore into the walls. Clara screamed, dropping to the floor as glass shattered around her. Eli fired back, steady, deliberate, each shot placed with grim precision. The night filled with smoke and fire. Clara crawled to the corner, heart hammering, ears ringing. Through the haze, she saw Eli framed in the doorway, standing against the storm of gunfire, unflinching. Her breath caught. For the first time in years, she felt something she had nearly forgotten. She felt safe. But then, through the din, she heard Kearney's voice, closer now, cutting through the smoke. "Clara!" Her head jerked up. The torchlight caught him, just beyond the porch, eyes fixed on her through the shattered door. "I know the truth," he snarled. "You were never blind, and you'll pay for lying to me." Clara froze, every muscle taut. He knew. Eli turned, saw her stricken face, then swung back to the yard where Kearney stood. His voice was steel. "You'll never touch her again." But Kearney only laughed, raising his pistol, the firelight glinting on steel. The shot rang out. The gunshot tore through the night, louder than thunder. Smoke curled in the doorway, acrid and stinging, as Eli staggered back a half step. Clara's cry broke from the cabin, raw, helpless. But Eli did not fall. His rifle kicked against his shoulder, another shot cracking out, and one of Kearney's men went tumbling from the saddle into the mud. Kearney himself cursed, ducking behind a post, his pistol hand bleeding from the graze. "Hold the line," he bellowed, his voice ragged. Bullets hammered the cabin again, splinters flying. Clara pressed flat to the floor, heart racing. Through the chaos, she saw Eli, tall in the doorway, unshaken, his silhouette lit by the fire behind him. "Stay down," he barked over his shoulder. Clara curled tighter into the corner, trembling, tears streaming. But something burned hot within her too. Fury at Kearney's cruelty, at years stolen, at being treated like nothing more than coin in a drunken man's debt. Another shot cracked from Eli's rifle. Another rider fell. Still they pressed closer, torches raised, circling. Flames licked at the porch rail. Clara crawled to the hearth, grabbed the iron poker with shaking hands, and clutched it like a weapon. She wasn't going to be dragged away again. Not blind, not cowering. Not this time. The siege raged on, a blur of gunfire and shouts. Eli's ammunition dwindled. He dropped the rifle to reload, his jaw set. Through the smoke, Kearney stepped forward again, teeth bared. "You can't win, Harper. Hand her over and I'll let you live." Eli's voice rang clear, carrying over the din. "She's free. She ain't yours, and she never will be." Kearney's eyes burned with rage. He motioned to his men. "Burn it." Torches arced through the night, landing on the roof, the walls. Flames caught quick, licking up dry timber. Smoke thickened, choking. Clara coughed, eyes watering, the heat searing. Eli grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back door. "We run for the ridge." They burst into the night, rain hissing against the fire, the ground slick with mud. Clara stumbled but did not fall. Her eyes were open now, wide and sharp, guiding her through the dark. Shots rang behind them. Eli fired back once, twice, then shoved her ahead toward the shadow of the cottonwoods. "Keep going." They scrambled down the creek bed, water rushing high from the storm. Clara slipped on the stones, gasping. Eli caught her, hauled her upright, his breath ragged but steady. Behind them, hooves pounded closer. Kearney himself thundered down the bank, pistol raised, eyes wild. "You can't run from me," he shouted. Eli spun, shoving Clara behind him, rifle leveled. But before he could fire, Kearney's shot cracked, grazing Eli's shoulder. He staggered, pain ripping through him. Clara screamed, grabbing the fallen rifle. She lifted it with trembling hands, the weight near breaking her arms. Her eyes locked on Kearney, clear, steady, unblinded. For one heartbeat, the world froze. Eli bleeding beside her, Kearney bearing down, and Clara standing tall with the rifle in her hands. Her voice rang out, fierce and unshaken. "You'll never take me again." She fired. Kearney reeled, the shot catching him square in the chest. He toppled from his horse into the rushing creek, the water swallowing his torch as darkness closed around him. For a moment there was only the storm, the hiss of rain on fire, the roar of the swollen creek. Then silence. Clara dropped the rifle, shaking, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. She stumbled to Eli's side, pressing her hands to his shoulder. "You're hurt. God, you're hurt." He caught her wrist gently, his eyes steady even through the pain. "I'll live." Her breath came fast, frantic. He would have killed you. I had to." Eli's gaze softened. "You saved us both." She broke then, collapsing against him, her sobs racking. He held her close, his good arm firm around her, the storm washing them clean. When at last they rose, the riders were gone, scattered to the night. Kearney's body lay carried downstream, swallowed by the river he had tried to rule. The days that followed were quiet. The cabin was charred, half ruined, but the land endured. Eli's wound healed slow but steady. Clara tended him with careful hands, her mask of blindness gone for good. She moved through the days with a strange lightness, as though each hour was borrowed freedom. She fetched water without fear, walked the ridge without bowing her head. One evening, as the prairie turned gold in the setting sun, she stood by the corral, watching the horses graze. Eli came to stand beside her, silent a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "You could leave now. Start fresh, somewhere Kearney never touched." Clara turned to him, her eyes steady. "And you? What would you do?" Eli shrugged, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Mend fences, plant again, same as always." She studied him, the lines of his face etched with weather and hardship, the steadiness that had carried her through fire and storm. "I don't want to run anymore," she said softly. "Not from the truth, not from myself." Her hand brushed his, tentative but sure, "And not from you." Eli met her eyes, and for the first time since he'd bought her from a drunken man for $1, he let the weight in his chest ease. "You won't have to," he said. That night, as the stars blazed sharp and clear above the plains, Clara sat by the fire, her hands folded in her lap. "All my life I thought blindness would keep me safe, but it was only when you saw me, truly saw me, that I began to live again." Eli said nothing. He only placed another log on the fire, the flames rising warm and steady. Outside, the prairie stretched endless, wild and free. The horizon did not end. Not for her, not for him, not anymore. In years to come, the story of Silas Kearney's fall would drift through the saloons and bunkhouses, told in hushed tones. Some said Harper killed him outright. Others claimed the girl he tried to own struck the fatal shot. But Eli and Clara never bothered to set the record straight. They had no need for legends, only for the quiet life they built together, one day at a time, beneath the wide and endless sky.